I would argue that the current state of DreamWorks is pretty good actually. They just ended 2022 off with Puss in Boots: The Last Wish, which is one of their best movies to date, but I think that above all, this year has shown us that DreamWorks really is the only animation studio out there that is capable of creating amazing franchises. And that's kinda disappointing. I mean, the only good quote-unquote animated franchise that doesn't come from DreamWorks is Toy Story, and even then Disney and Pixar, which are the two studios behind Toy Story, aren't in such great places right now. They're beginning to prioritize money over art, which is a little heartbreaking honestly, because I used to adore their ability to make consistently great movies, but they've recently had a colossal dip in their quality, only pumping out something good nowhere near as often as we would like. And then there's the franchises, which honestly bites the hardest. Need I go into detail? You would already know exactly what I would say. Disney sequels, bad. Pixar sequels, mostly mediocre and bad. Illumination sequels. And then there's DreamWorks. This is the only current animation studio to make actual good sequels. Their ability to craft awe-inspiring, artistic, phenomenal stories ranging across multiple different installments is truly unmatched. It's kinda one of their most defining legacies. I don't know why I just said that, because today I'm going to be talking about Madagascar Escape to Africa. I think it's blatantly clear by now that Madagascar and art are not at all compatible, and I honestly think that Madagascar 2 best shows what I mean by that. This movie is not meant to be taken seriously. It is a disgusting, horrifying piece of absolute garbage movie, and with that, I really like this film. I think it's a shockingly good movie, and an even shockinger sequel. Now, do I think it's as good as the first Madagascar? Yeah, I mean, maybe not quite, but damn it, this movie completely succeeds my expectations entirely to deliver one hell of an exciting, energetic, funny, balls-to-the-wall comedic riot. I did a review on the first one a little while back, and I figured that it would be fun to make another one, but this time, we are going to be talking about why Madagascar 2 is
so darn ugly.
Okay, I know that this is meant to be like a really positive video, I promise, but I feel obliged to mention the cons present throughout this film before I actually get to the good stuff, because we simply cannot go anywhere further until I get the ads out of the way. Also, obviously, there are spoilers here, so if you haven't watched this movie, then just beware for the spoilies. So, I think my biggest and honestly my only big issue with this movie is that I don't really like some of the pacing. It got a little too dragged out towards the end of the second act and the beginning of the third act, and I think the real problem with all this is that the film is just trying to juggle way too many plots at once and can't decide which is more important. I'll go over the basic plot of the movie soon, but like, it had Alex doing this big fight thing that's meant to be his path into lion manhood and discovers that he's literally the opposite of all the other lions, while on the other hand, you got Marty learning that he's literally the exact same as all the other zebras, and doesn't really get more than like 2 or 3 scenes to solidify that. This isn't such a big deal because there still is some really good stuff that comes out of these two plot lines, but I just feel like one of them was dragged out a bit too much, and then the other wasn't given enough room to breathe. So that's my only big problem, where I just feel like the movie is juggling like 12 different subplots, and sometimes, like occasionally, I do feel that it drags on a bit. My smaller issues could be that some of the animal designs haven't aged all that well, there are some cliche plot points that I don't love too greatly, and mate, I know that literally everyone that has reviewed this movie has raved about this, but it is just so infuriating that they put that birthmark of his on his hand. I mean, bro, you do realize that the human race is not that stupid, and we do recall Alex not having a birthmark on him in the first Madagascar movie. 1 out of 10 abysmal film. And that's about it. Honestly, there's not as many problems here as I thought there would be, but alas, now we get to the goods. So to summarize the basic premise of Madagascar Escape to Africa, the main characters leave Madagascar by plane, never to return again for the remainder of the franchise. Julien leaves a gecko in charge. Yeah. Just let that sink in for a second. But on the way back to New York, the plane crash lands in Africa, where Alex finds his parents. Every character starts doing their own thing individually, but comes to realize that life is better when they are together. Actually, no, I don't really know about the last part, unless coming together means volcano sacrifices and taking out a dam built by the old lady from that one scene in the first film. It's kind of hard to explain this movie's plot, unlike the first film, because there's gotta be like at least 20 different subplots. Wait, did I say 12? That only connect together in the last 15 minutes. But that's one of the main reasons why this movie actually works. So, I say we just get right into it. One of the biggest things about this movie that I think improved over the original was the characters. Believe it or not, I liked almost every character in the movie. Hell, maybe all of them in fact. Pretty much everyone was given a good amount of room to breathe, even if their personal stories don't. I'ma just say it now, this movie is where the penguins are at their absolute peak. They are also hilarious in Madagascar 1, sure, and they were also pretty great in Madagascar 3, but I think they just shine the brightest here. First of all, the subplot is given so much more room to breathe. Like, whereas in the first movie when they were amazing, but didn't get tons of screen time, and the third movie where they didn't really even have a subplot, here they have a really well-focused narrative where they are having to rebuild the plane along with Mason and Phil. The best part of it, however, is that this allows for some of the straight up funniest moments in the entirety of DreamWorks animation to occur. One of which is obviously the scene where the penguins steal a Ferrari vehicle from the tour group that Nana was in. Every moment was hysterical, from the penguins realizing that Nana was still in the car and throwing her off the back to that glorious, harmonious...
Is she dead?
No!
God, it's just so good. Every character in the movie was bumped up to 12 on the insanity scale. They took the wacky and off-the-hook shenanigans from the penguins, doubled the crazy, and then applied it to every single character. There are the crazier and funnier characters like the penguins and King Julien, sure, but with that having been said, there isn't really a weak link in the whole film. Everyone has their own thing going on, and I like or love just about all of it. Alex is having to impress his parents and his fellow lions by competing in this sort of male ritual which requires you to fight another lion, but Alex misunderstands the point of the ritual and mistakes it all for a dance-off, so then he gets banished. I like the relationship between him and his dad especially. It's a little cliche and was given a bit too much screen time, but you can tell that they tried at least to develop this father-son thing, and I can respect that. Alex being a total racist towards Marty is just the funniest thing in the world. I'm sorry, it just cracks me up every single time when Alex suggests that Marty wears a bell because all the zebras look the same. I also like Alex and his decision to get the water back and to restore the watering hole to its former glory, despite how the all-amazing Makunga, played by Alec Baldwin, mocks him for it. I really like this funny Alec Baldwin lion. He's the kind of fun-as-hell villain that doesn't really need to be taken all that seriously in the slightest. He's just some massive jerk that wants to be the alpha lion, and man, I just really like it. Marty was also good in this movie, even though I think he was better in the first film. I kinda liked his subplot where he realized that he was just a clone and the result of generations of inbreeding. It was all pretty fun. Said subplot didn't have a lot of room to breathe, but I really liked the conclusion of it with Alex and Marty making up in the end. It's a really sweet scene which I'll talk about a little bit more in the video. Melman, of all people, was also given a pretty neat plot line in the movie where he has this big old crush on Gloria, but she's into the one, the only...
Moto.
Okay, I need to stop pretending like anything else matters right now, because Moto is straight up the greatest character in all of cinema. He serves to be the sexiest hippo known to man, and every shot of him gives me pure joy. Moto is the love interest that all movies should aspire towards, and wait, what was I talking about again? Oh yeah, the melman. I thought it was actually really sweet how they gave it their all with this subplot, and they did their best to create something of actual effort and romance. And even if the turnout was all just a big joke because it clashes with the zany tone of the rest of the movie,
Breeding program?
I really like it. Speaking of which, I adore the King Julien subplot prisoner in Madagascar escape to Africa. So basically, the watering hole has run out of water, right? Alex has gone off to try and find more water, but just as all hope seems lost, King Julien comes out of nowhere and claims that if they throw someone into the volcano, then the sky gods will take the sacrifice and give water to the animals. The animals ask if it really does work, and Julien turns to Maurice, to which Maurice says,
Maurice?
Yeah, it's 50-50.
You see, it's all just nonsense, but somehow it actually works. Hell, this plotline even connects to Melman's one, because Melman thinks that he's got some disease and is gonna die, so he volunteers to be the sacrifice. Every plotline somehow connects at some point throughout the movie. Hell, even Mort has his own subplot where he's trying to get back to King Julien, and in doing so, he falls off a plane into the ocean, somehow survives, and then gets chased by a shark, and somehow he got back to King Julien. That's just one of the greatest things of all time. time. All these hundreds of mini subplots come together in the end so seamlessly, just in time for the climax, which is honestly one of my favorite finale sequences in any DreamWorks movie. It's just so much fun, with Nana trying to eat Alex and claiming that it tastes like chicken, then the penguins flying the now functioning plane in to rescue Alex and his dad, and then through a miscommunication with the chimps, the gang decide to take out the dam instead of escaping. It's just a great climax.
No! Medic!
One of the most shockingly impressive aspects of Madagascar 2 is that, and I kid you not, it might just be one of the top 3 funniest DreamWorks movies. Yeah, the title should have given it away. This movie is an actual comedic riot from beginning to end.
Excuse me.
Almost every joke lands for me, and I think that's just helped with time. I quote-unquote liked the funny stuff as a little kid, but it never actually clicked with me until a few years back. I was only like 12 or 13, and I was with some friends and we were watching Madagascar the Second. We were having a good old time, and then Skipper made an incest joke, and I could not control my laughter. My friends were probably looking at me like... But I didn't care, man. The fact that I finally understood that joke felt so incredible, and even now, it's definitely one of my favorite jokes of not only the movie itself, but also the entire Madagascar franchise. Mwah! Chef's kiss. The whole movie's packed with a ton of these other really sort of funny jokes, and surprisingly, almost all of them work for me. I can't believe it. Another joke that always gets me going is when the penguins are having a business meeting with Mason and Phil because the chimps stopped rebuilding the plane because they wanted to be granted maternity leave, despite how they are clearly all males. So Skipper denies said maternity leave, and then the chimps pull out pics of Skipper and the missus, resulting in them blackmailing the penguins. It's such a snappy and well-written scene, on top of being absolutely hilarious in every single way. The line deliveries from everyone, the stakes, the fact that it actually feels like a proper business meeting. Oh man! Pretty much every single character is funny in this movie, which is something I can't quite say about the other two films. Like, sure, I do still prefer the first movie a little bit more overall, but damn it, I had such a fun time with everyone here. Sometimes while watching this, I'll just crack up for no apparent reason. It's just that watching this bonkers plot with these bonkers characters unfold is funny enough in its own right, and that's kind of the underlying goal behind this movie. It's not really meant to be taken all too seriously. It doesn't have any strong, mature, thought-provoking themes. It's literally the opposite of that. Every character's story in this movie, whether you like it or not, is mostly a joke. The penguins are rebuilding the plane and arguing with the chimps about maternity leave despite how they're all males. The waterhole runs out of water, and Julien's solution is to just throw someone into the volcano. Alex is a massive racist. Even something like Melman trying to admit that he wants to move it with Gloria is complete nonsense. I mean, there was absolutely no signs of him crushing on her in the first film, and let's be completely straight with ourselves and just admit that Melman clearly isn't even interested in Gloria. He just used that as a cover-up so that he can secretly get with Moto. I mean, it pretty much makes perfect sense, am I right? And if you don't agree with me, then you're wrong. You see, pretty much all of this movie is a joke. After all, it is a sequel to a Madagascar movie. But despite all of that, this movie did something that shocked me more than any incest joke I've ever heard. They actually tried. So, let's talk about that. I find it kinda remarkable that in the midst of a movie so overwhelmingly packed with zany humor and extremely crazy stuff, you can so easily tell that the writers, directors, and pretty much everyone else involved in this movie actually cared. They cared about continuing this weird story about 4 zoo animals along with a group of penguins, 2 lemurs, chimps, and the Grim Reaper trying to get back to New York. The sheer amount of effort that it must have taken to create something this bonkers is just so wild, considering that the first movie was a lot more laid back in terms of its story and characters. Everything is accelerated here. The characters are all super funny and entertaining. The humor is exaggerated even further, with the film itself being just almost as funny as the first film. The stories are all filled to the brim with excitement, and somehow, some way, it actually works for me. There was clearly a lot of heart put into this movie, and you can tell that they were really trying with this one, maybe even more so than the first movie, as hard as that would be for me to admit. And you can see this effort especially through Melman and Gloria's story, and even with Alex and Marty's. That scene where Alex is able to spot Marty out of a million other zebras and goes on to say that he could tell it was Marty because he's black with white stripes compared to everyone else who are white with black stripes is one of the most the most heartwarming moment in the entire franchise. Because they didn't have to bring that one throwaway line from the first film back, but they did, and it means so much to me that they did. I think I heard somewhere that the team decided to go to Africa and shoot 10,000 hours of footage there just to get the perfect background designs for the movie. I mean, do you see Illumination doing that? It just baffles me that these people are taking this ridiculous story from the film and doing their best to advance it even further by giving it more heart whilst sticking to the incredibly funny comedy. I mean, all around, despite its flaws, it's kind of the total package. Despite how I do prefer the first one a little bit more and consider it the slightly better movie, it doesn't change the fact that I adore this movie so insanely much. It's kind of a perfect continuation of the first film, and I think it's a rock solid 8 out of 10 movie that I will never get tired of revisiting. And that's over. Now we got the third film to do, and trust me when I say that I have some opinions. See y'all later, you bunch of crazed moto stans.